Hello, welcome again to another TLC video. Today talking about the CR system. Alright, the CR system. Now, if you are, this probably isn't going to be too big of a video or too long. This is more of just kind of my thoughts on the subject. To give my 2 cents here on what I think is absolutely a broken system, and that is not groundbreaking by any means. That is not a hot take. I think a hot take would be if I said, yeah, it's perfect. Everything works exactly the way it is designed to. But I think maybe perhaps looking at the system, seeing its flaws and going, yep, the system is broken and we need to throw it out. I don't think that that is 100% true. And that's kind of going to be the point of the video here. So, CR system. First off, well, what is the CR system? Well, if you are a player, odds are the CR system is something you don't really know too much about. Because it's not something you're usually privy to. It's not something you look at. However, to dungeon masters that are, if you are someone who DMs, you know exactly what the CR is. All right, CR is, of course, the challenge rating. All right, it is the lovely little number next to the monster's name, beast name, aberration's name, whatever, that basically gives a ballpark guesstimate as to how strong, all right, this particular creature is. So, for instance, a single wolf, all right, is CR 1/2. All right, so that means that, one of them, in theory, a single level 1 player should be able to go up against a single basic wolf and come out victorious because they are a CR 1/2. A player is, considered 1 CR, which generally, at least the way the book was written, the CR system was originally meant to be, if you had a rough estimate of a party of 3 to 5 players, average of 4, and they were all of the same level, so let's say level 4, then 1 or 2 CR below it would, below that number, right, below 4 in this example, would be considered a easy to mediocre combat. All right, so if I have 4 party members and they are all level 4, then sending out a CR2 creature is a warm-up. All right, that's an easy fight, right? Like, that's something that the player should be able to handle very easily. If I send a CR4 creature at a party, a 4-man party with level 4 characters, then that is considered to be a medium to difficult creature, depending on certain abilities, depending on, the room, does the environment assist this creature at all, things like that. And then if you go a couple of CRs, 1 to 2 CRs above the player's level in CR, then you are dealing with an ever-increasing deadly encounter. So if I send a CR6, in theory, the way the book was written, that should now be considered a difficult to deadly encounter. And it only goes exponentially further up from there. Now, DMs, this is not new to us. We've known this since 5th edition came out. This isn't groundbreaking. The CR system is broken. All right, it doesn't work, right? There are problems to the CR system. And the reason why is because although I might be able to put 2 things in the same CR, because of the situation, because of some abilities they have, they could not be further from it. All right, they are so horribly off base. I have for you here 2 creatures to symbolize this. All right, the first creature is a gold dragon wormling. All right, it has an AC of 17, 60 average hit points. Its breath weapon, which I believe has a DC of 13, does an average of 4d10 damage, which comes out to be a guesstimate of about 22 to 25 hit points once you kind of do the averages there. It has a fly speed of 60 feet. Its bite and claw attacks do about the same amount of routine average damage as, say, a fighter with a great weapon, with a great sword or great axe. Okay. Now, this is a CR3 creature. which means I should be able to put, if I have a party of level 2s, then this would be a pretty challenging encounter. If I had a party of level 3s, it should be medium to difficult, depending on party makeup. If I have level 4 party, they should be able to handle this Dragon Wormling relatively well. But let's take a second here, and let me give you a second monster here, alright? The Giant Scorpion. AC 15, 52 average hit points, and it deals an average damage of about 1d6 plus 2, but it does get to attack, I believe, twice. No fly speed. I think it may possibly have a burrow speed, but I don't want to say that and then be wrong. Alright, so we will just go ahead and, we will see that, no burrow speed for now. That way I'm not giving you false information. Now, I didn't want to have a shit ton of information here on my screen. I wanted to keep it concise and simple. The Dragon Wormling here is a CR3. The Giant Scorpion is also a CR3. Do we see a problem here? Not even taking into consideration here that, and I've talked about this before in a previous video, a while ago, that we as DMs, we need to run our dragons differently. Dragons are smart, intelligent creatures. It says so in the book. And if dragons truly live as long as the book claims that they do in order to get to be adults and ancients, then they know how to handle adventurers, i.e. they maximize their fly speed. They fly in, they breath weapon, and then they get out because they're aware that, hey, every time, these puny little humanoids, launch a spell at me, they're on a timer. They only have so many spell slots. I can, my breath never seems to go away. It may take a few extra seconds, sometimes, weirdly, for it to recharge, but I can just keep circling around, come in, breath weapon, fly out of range. My breath weapon usually is further than a lot of them can even attack. So I'm just going to keep swooping in, doing my breath and flying away. Right? That's how we need to run dragons more often. Granted, will it piss your players off? Absolutely. But will we finally give credit to the dragons? I think so. But even leaving that outside, look at these stat differences. Now, you may look at the hit points, and I think that that's kind of the problem with the CR system. I think that all they ended up taking is they took like the basic stats. They went, okay, as long as they're, within 1 or 2 AC, as long as they're within, let's say a range of 10 hit points, then nothing else matters. Never mind the fact that the dragon has a 60 feet fly speed. Never mind the fact that you may not think that a 2 different AC is that big of a deal, but keep in mind here, there are spells that raise your AC by 2. A shield raises your AC by 2. So 2 must be an important number. It must make a big enough difference. Otherwise, that wouldn't be the bonus we give to these spells and these shields. And yet both of these creatures are found in the same CR category. I think it is XP to level 3. They do a very good video on explaining, and I don't remember what creatures they use, but they also do kind of a riff off, a little bit of a versus situation where they do a little skit where the DM throws, I think it's a CR2 or CR4 or something, and the party just absolutely annihilates it in like a single round, whereas then the DM uses another CR, whichever one it was, and just absolutely TPKs them. And that's exactly what can happen here. This Giant Scorpion can go in there and, maybe hurt a couple of players. This Dragon Wormling can literally TPK the entire party. This is a CR3 creature. There are plenty of 3rd level characters who do not have 22 to 25 HP. So this dragon comes down, they fail their saving throws, and now it's just a TPK. It's instant. It's game over for them. And yet you don't find that in, say, the Giant Scorpion. And I think that that's the problem. Our CR system does not take into account certain things like, say, different forms of movement, like, say, incorporeal form. So, if you have a wraith or a ghost enemy that is not utilizing its ability to go in and out of walls, or floors or ceilings, then you're not handling it correctly. And yet what you will find is as soon as you're like, okay, I'm going to learn everything there is about the Wraith. I'm going to make sure I utilize every aspect of this Wraith. That means this thing's going to be strafing. It's going to be coming in. It's going to be, as soon as it, because it's not the, I forget what its intelligence and wisdom modifier is, but, if a Wraith knows it's getting hurt more by this creature versus another, why isn't it going in the floor and then targeting the squishies? Why is it not taking out the healer first? If it's lived this long, if it has any sense of awareness and intelligence from its previous life, then it should know that, healing exists in this world of Dungeons and Dragons, and that it should take care of it. And yet we don't play it that way. But if we did, I promise you would see that, holy shit, according to this, a Wraith is only a CR 4, I think, 5 maybe. Yet it's not. As soon as you start playing it that way, look at the Spectre in Curse of Strahd in Death House. It's only a CR2. By the time your players meet it, you have a party of first level characters. A group of first level adventurers should, in theory, be able to take on a Spectre. It may be a little challenging if the Spectre goes first, if it gets to the squishy right away, if it uses its life drain, if it rolls really high. There is a way to make it difficult. It definitely can. And yet, when we actually look at what the reputation Death House has. And I think it's to things like this. And this, these are the kinds of things that the CR system just doesn't accommodate for. So where does that leave us then? All right, are you saying there, TLC, that we just need to throw out the CR system? Well, I've heard a lot of DMs say so. I've heard a lot of DMs that just say, yeah, the CR system needs to just be completely revamped. The one that exists right now, don't even look at it. Look at AC, look at damage, average damage output, look at average HP, and then go from there. You come up with it. But I feel like that's really bad advice. And the reason I say that's really bad advice is because, what if you are a first-time DM? What if you're a player who, you've been playing for a few years now, and you're willing, you're wanting to step out of your comfort zone. You want to DM for the first time, and you get handed, and your DM friend, the, usually, immortal DM, hands you the Monster Manual book, and you're reading it for the first time, and there's so many, not to mention, get the, monsters of the of the multiverse, get I don't think Xanthars has any monsters in it, but, Volos, maybe an older edition, with, something like Volos. And you realize just, holy shit, there's so many monsters, and you feel overwhelmed. And that's why I don't think that the CR system needs to be completely thrown out. I think how we perceive it needs to be changed. Instead of looking at the CR system as a perfect system that does exactly the way that it was designed to do, I think instead we need to look at it as more of like a ballpark. That if your players are level 3, then you should have, then your scope, your window of enemies that you can throw at your party should range between CRs 2 to 4. But then it's up to you to do your own research. You, the DM, need to look up that monster and really see. This is my problem with, like, say, Xanathar's random encounter table, is because having ran... I was running a campaign where my players went into a very large body of water. They were going to be there for a long time. They needed to get down to the bottom of it. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to utilize a random encounter table. But I didn't want to make one myself because I'm a big fan of, don't reinvent the wheel. If a wheel is sitting there, just take off the wheel and put it on your goddamn cart. You don't have to worry about, don't whittle your own, right? So I was like, okay, I know Xanathar's has... an underwater random encounter table, and it even does the really nice thing where it splits it up between, levels 1 through 5, 5 through 10, 10 through 15, etc. So I just had that on my side, and when my players ended up going into the water eventually, they, I had them roll, because they didn't do anything to really avoid any of the monsters that live, the denizens of the deep. And it was something like, in one encounter... there was like an encounter that was like they had to go up against like 2 sea hags, which they fucking slaughtered. Like they beat it in like, I think like 2 rounds. Like, it was hardly even a fight. And then the next combat encounter, the next random encounter, was like 2d4 plus 1 sanguine. I always mess up the pronunciation of them. The sea peoples. All right, what, you know, the trident bearers. All right, whoever the fuck they are. Okay, and they were almost TPK'd for no other reason than because of action economy. There was like 7 enemies on the table. And so they did what I thought these sea people would know how to do, which is, you know, you use your movement speed, you literally, you know, swim all around them, which when your party didn't have swim speed because they weren't that prepared for going underwater, even though they knew where they were going, these sea people did. You know, so they were, you know, so for all intents and purposes, they were flying around my party and were able to just focus on the weak ones. They focused on the ones that were doing the casting, the ones that were missing, and the ones that really didn't seem to be able to attack underwater. They left them alone because these are supposed to be intelligent creatures who have lived underwater long enough to know when, you know, what is the biggest target, right? So that's what they did. And it was almost a TPK. And yet, besides, you know, adding some intelligence, I guess, you know, some tactics to the fish people combat, I didn't change anything. Their attacks were the same. The HCs were the same. I literally followed, you know, both of these combat encounters came from the same exact pool, you know, the same exact random encounter table. So they should have, in theory, been very similarly, and yet they weren't. Because my party was more created, was more focused in dealing with big, chunky targets than dealing with lots of smaller guys. And I knew that, and I would have been able to account for that if I would have done my own research. Which is why I say that we need to stop looking at CRs as a end-all, be-all, you know, oh, it's because I cannot pick, you know, because every fourth, you know, CR4 creature isn't exactly the same, then we need to throw it out. I don't think so. I don't think we need to go that far. Because if we go that far, if it truly became just, you know, okay, you know, I have a friend who wants to DM, I take my monster manuals and I just throw them at this new player turn to DM and say, yeah, read through it, find the ones that look cool, don't pay attention to the CRs because they're busted, have fun. I mean, we all remember our first time DMing. Do you remember all, you know, how overwhelming that was? Imagine if you were the first time DMing, imagine if that was the piece of evidence, you know, your DM gave you, your previous DM gave you. Was, yeah, the thing that's supposed to kind of help you pick out monsters, it doesn't work. Here, just fucking pick the ones that look cool. You're waiting for problems. Which is why I say that we don't need to throw out the CR system. But we need to just kind of change. We as DMs, we need to change the way we think about them. All right, imagine them as ballpark instead, you know, ranges. And then go from there. And do your own research. Know who your party is made up of. Because at the end of the day, all right, even the worst DMs, even the most, you know, antagonistic DMs, all right, the DMs that are like, I am here to fucking kill you, which is a horrible thing, by the way. Like, if you're a DM, don't get me wrong, I think DMs should never pull punches. I think a DM should always be willing to go, hey, this is an intelligent creature. It is a smart creature. It saw you heal before. So when it knocks you down, it's not going to just leave you unconscious. It's going to kill you. Because it knows. It's an intelligent creature. It knows it lives in a world of magic where, you know, spells like Revivify and Cure Wounds exist. So why would it allow you to sit here and be healed? Like, no, it's going to end your life. And the best way it seems to know that is when you attack something, attack it a few more times when it's unconscious. And that usually guarantees that it won't get back up. You know, I'm not saying that DM should step away from that, because to be honest, if I got the sense that my DM was pulling punches, I wouldn't really enjoy combat. Because it's like none of my choices matter. Because at the end of the day, my DM's gonna, you know, the training wheels will always be on. You know, no matter what choice I make, like the DM's always going to make sure that we at least don't die. So why would I care? But the antagonistic DM, the DM that's like, I'm going to create monsters in which they are out to kill you. They are going at, you know, like every shape and form that I can, right? That I believe is wrong. And I think even the worst of them, even the worst antagonistic DMs, I think deep down they don't want their players to die over and over again, because at the end of the day, like, if you know, we want our players to tell their stories. We want to sit around and enjoy this game together. And if you just keep trying to kill your player over and over and over again, eventually, unless they're a glutton for punishment, eventually they're going to go, hey, I'm kind of done. All right, I've made 5 characters in the past 4 weeks. All right, like I have no connection to this character at this point, because I know it's just going to be fucking cannon fodder. Like, you're going to shred my character sheet in the next 1 or 2 combat sessions, because you just keep making combat encounters that are too damn hard. No DM wants to have that. All right, we want to be known as the DM who, you know, lets the dice fall, who, you know, is willing to have some sense of realism and toughness in our fights, but we don't want to kill our players every goddamn time. At the very least, I don't think you do. So, CR system, I don't think it should be thrown out, but I do think that we as DMs, we need to use it more as a range mechanic, and then just do our research. And I think if you do that, you will find that the CR system does actually hold some value. But hey, that's my 2 cents. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, a little bit of a shorter one, and I will catch you next time.